All right, now I'm going to hand it over to the guy doing the sermon. Hello, everybody. My name is Tom Brocious, and I'm the lead pastor of this church. See, that was the smoothest thing that's happened so far, right? That was smooth, right? Yeah, okay. Okay, that's what we need. I'll take over from here. So, you guys may have noticed that we're not doing 80s power ballads anymore, and I know a lot of people went out of town for 4th of July because they were so upset that we weren't going to be listening to, I think it's Foreigner this week, which is the next up. They were like, well, we're not doing Foreigner. I'm just going to go out of town and celebrate the birth of the country, I guess, you know. I'm going to go visit my family because if we're not listening to 80s power ballads, what's the purpose of going to church, right? But we will come back to it as long as people will put up with it. And I recognize that I do weird sermon series, but that's just because I'm weird, and I believe that preaching is whole person communication. It's not just me delivering information. It's coming out of my prayer life, right? Your life should be weird. It should be idiosyncratic. Like, your idiosyncrasies should come out as you express your faith in the world. The world needs more than anything for you as a Christian to have idiosyncrasies right now, because they see so much uniformity where people don't question, they don't think for themselves, they don't express who they are, because expressing who you are threatens the echo chamber. When you live out of who you are showing people something that they crave. People want Jesus, but they also want to be themselves. They don't want to have to hide who they are to be in the presence of God. Give them that gift. So what happened is the Power Ballads wasn't the weirdest sermon series I've preached so far. That was definitely the Advent series, asking if Christianity was a cult and why the birth of Jesus separates us, I believe, from cults, even though you can be a follower of Jesus in a cult. But Jesus pulls us into healthy religion, and that's the series I'm most proud of. And it also weirded people out. And I promised this year that we were going to take Advent very seriously. We're going to do Advent conventionally, but we are going to go real hard. And there's more reasons than just trying to make up for that series, because this would be a massive overcorrection if that was it. So we are starting our preparation for celebrating the birth of Jesus in the world on July 1st. We are going to go all the way through the Old Testament. And we are going to point towards Jesus, point towards the story of God that only makes, that you have to really get to understand what Jesus really means. Jesus is so much more than just the Romans road. That's how people get invited into the faith. You got to know the Romans road, right? You're a sinner. You're helpless. You deserve to burn for eternity, but God loves you. Believe it or not, there's more to the Bible than that. It's actually misleading if those are the only 4 things that you need to know to be able to surrender your life to Jesus. It's really, really misleading. And so we're just going to go through the Old Testament. We're not going to go verse by verse because that would take a long time. We would be in Genesis until next year. And maybe we would also have missed some quality content in Genesis. If you read Genesis, you can read it 5 times in a row, and you're like, I don't think I got that the first 4 times I read it. Over and over and over again, because it is dense. We're going to go through on a skim level through the Old Testament and show how Jesus fits into that narrative. One of the coolest things I'm looking forward to, I don't know how we're going to pull it off, is I got Charlena's permission to help me do a Hanukkah service, because I think Hanukkah is a very beautiful thing. I think it fits the Christian narrative. It fits everything. And it's just going to be cool. We're going to celebrate the cleansing of the temple. So let's get into the sermon series. This is creation, Genesis 1. But before we get into Genesis 1, I'm going to read the first 5 verses again from our reader response. Praise the Lord, my soul. Lord, my God, you are very great. You are clothed with splendor and majesty. The Lord wraps himself in light as with a garment. He stretches out the heavens like a tent and lays the beams of his upper chambers on their waters. He makes the clouds with his chariot and rides on the wings of the wind. He makes winds his messengers, flames of fire his servants. He set the earth on its foundations. It can never be moved. I'm afraid to change it because I'm going to wait for just a second before I go there. So when I read this passage, there's a lot of stuff there. First of all, anytime you hear God and tent, like in the same passage, it's probably not talking about like a Kelty, right? It's not talking about a Coleman tent that you're having outside of a campfire, right? It's talking about a temple, talking about the tabernacle, which we'll get into more, the portable temple of the people of God, right? God is stretching out the heavens like a tent because God is building a temple. If you're going to look at how this world functions in its relationship with God, if you want to understand how the Bible unfolds, the first thing you have to understand is that the world is God's temple. Not just this temple, the whole thing is God's temple. But then it starts talking about things like the separation of waters and beams holding up the earth being on its foundations. What does it mean to you for the world to be set, for the planet Earth to be set on its foundations? It's kind of weird, but what do you think it meant to the original audience for the planet Earth to be set on its foundations? This is a trick question because they didn't know the Earth was a planet. And we who are like, well, we have science now. We know it's a planet. We're so much smarter than them. But you know where we get the word planet? Them, right? They knew what planets were. They just didn't know that the Earth was a planet. They knew of 5 planets because they could see them with their eyes. They didn't have a telescope, but they could see these 5 planets. And when we look at the word planet, let's look at this real quick. This word in the Greek is asteros. It's just written there in Latin too, means stars. And asteris planetae means wandering planet, wandering stars. They didn't know that the planets were different in stars, except that they wandered. Because if you think about this, at different times of the year, you could look up in the sky, and Orion might be right there. But you come back a few months later, Orion's right here, right? Orion's moving, but it never loses its shape because all those stars are staying the same distance away from one another. But if you look up in the sky, you could see Mercury over by Orion. But at another time, you could look up and Mercury's over here next to Cassiopeia or by the Big Dipper, because it doesn't stay in the same format like the rest of the stars do. The 5 planets are the wandering stars. You got Mercury, Venus, Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter, and sometimes they would include the sun and the moon. But the one thing that I think the Jewish people in particular called them were the seven lights. The seven lights in the sky. And there is a connection with the Jewish temple, right? Inside the Jewish temple is a lampstand that they call the menorah, with 7 candles representing the 7 lights, the 5 wandering star planets, and the sun and the moon. That is not a coincidence. We're going to look at what a model of the world looked like to somebody who didn't know that the earth orbits the sun. That is what is being described in formation by Genesis 1. You see pillars of the earth holding up earth. Underneath it and to the side, you have abyss of water. Pro-presenters there. But if you look up here, there's the vault of heaven. You know what the vault of heaven is? It's the sky. Inside the sky, you have a sun and a moon and stars. There's no planets in this thing, but that's what they are. And then above that, you have water where they believe the rain came from. When God floods the earth with Noah, he opens that vault and all the water comes down, undoes creation. And beyond that water is the place of God. Here's my question for you. How many of us agree that this is what earth looks like? Like if you were to go up on the moon, would you see this? You definitely wouldn't see that. But you would see a round sphere floating in space, right? Does this understanding of the Bible, of the world, that the Bible is clearly teaching, invalidate the Bible? I don't think it does. You know, the Bible also tells you that you think with your intestines. Yeah, every time you see in the Bible, it talks about your mind. Your translators are changing the word. They thought they're using the word entrails. They thought you thought with your entrails. If you think about, when you have a feeling, an emotion, you have this gut reaction, right? They thought all thinking takes place there. Just because that's not accurate doesn't mean that God is not communicating with them. Who knows what kind of scientific discoveries that are coming that we have no idea about? God's not here to give you a science book with the Bible. He's helping you interpret the world. The world is God's temple. Now, when we read this creation story that's coming up, and you believe that the world is created in 7 days, and you're firm in that belief, you studied it, you believe it, I want you to know if anybody here makes fun of you, I will have a stern talk with them. People can disagree about things here. But if we agree that the world doesn't look like this, but the Bible is still accurate, it's highly likely that if this 7-day creation story isn't scientifically the production that we all think it should be, maybe that doesn't invalidate it either. Maybe we're reading it through Western lenses when it wasn't written to a Western audience. Do we want to read it as it was intended to be written, or read it how we've been interpreting it for 200 years? That's a big deal. I mean, I don't know why God makes light before he puts lights in the sky. Maybe he's just wrapping himself in light. But there's some things here that I don't know what to do with if we're taking it like extremely literally. very much a concrete reality that it's describing, though. This is Genesis 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. There was evening and there was morning, the first day. And God said, "Let there be a vault between the waters to separate water from water." That's the creation of the sky. So God made the vault and separated the water under the vault from the water above it. And it was so. God called the vault sky. And there was evening and there was morning on the second day. And God said, "Let the water under the sky be gathered to one place, and let dry ground appear." And it was so. God called the dry ground land, and the gathered waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants and trees on the land that bear fruit with seed in it, according to their various kinds." And it was so. The land produced vegetation, plants bearing seed according to their kinds, trees bearing fruit with the seed in it according to their kinds, and God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, the third day. And God said, "Let there be lights in the vault of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them serve as signs to mark sacred times, days, and years." And let them be lights in the vault of the sky to give light on the earth. And it was so. God made two great lights, the greater light to govern the day and the lesser light to govern the night. He also made the stars. God set them in the vault of the sky to give light on the earth, to govern the day and the night, to separate light from darkness. God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning on the fourth day. And God said, "Let the water teem with living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the vault of the sky." So God created the great creatures of the sea and every living thing with which the water teems that moves about in it, according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful and increase in number, and fill the water in the seas, and let the birds increase on the earth." And there was evening, and there was morning on the fifth day. And God said, "Let the land produce living creatures according to their kinds, the livestock, the creatures that move along the ground, and the wild animals, each according to its kind." And it was so. God made the wild animals according to their kinds, the livestock according to their kinds, and all the creatures that move along the ground according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, over the livestock, all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." So God created mankind in his image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female. He created them. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground." Then God said, "I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food." and to all the beasts of the earth and all the birds in the sky and all the creatures that move along the ground. Everything that has the breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food, and it was so. God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. And there was evening and there was morning, the sixth day. I'm cutting it off there because then we're going to chapter 2. On the seventh day, God rests, right? So when we read this again, I'm just going to pull this back up again. So at the very beginning, it's all darkness over the deep. The deep is the deep ocean, the unformed world. It's all waters. And God says that there be light, and light appears. He separates light from darkness. He separates the waters from themselves. Put this vault in between it, right? And then he brings this land up from the ground on those pillars. And then he says, let's bring forth vegetation. And here comes plants. And it's only after there's plants that God decides to put a sun in the sky, right? The sun and the moon are in the sky is like, okay, now let's begin making animals, right? He puts the sea creatures in and the winged birds. And then he brings forth all the creatures on the land, like livestock and wild animals. And it's only then that he creates humanity. And he says that both man and woman share the quality of image of God. I believe in God's eyes, men and women are totally equal. I believe that with all my heart. I don't think God intends it to be that way. Intends it to be the way that it has been. I think the Bible treats it as if it's a given that it's going to happen, but I don't think that's what he wants. So God has created an orderly world. Do you think of that when you walk around the world, that God has ordered your world for you? I don't necessarily always do it. God has created a world for you to live in. And then God rests. What does it mean to you that God is resting? When you think of God resting, is he drinking lemonade sitting in a hammock? Is he taking a nap? I'm going to read a passage to you real quick that gives you a little hint at what they might mean by resting. This is from Joshua 1:13. The Lord your God will give you rest by giving you this land. There's something about Israel getting to rest by inheriting the land of Canaan. Now, when they went into the land of Canaan, did they sit around and drink lemonade? I don't think they had lemonade, but whatever. Did they sit around and drink and have leisurely activities all day? Or did they have to grow crops and tend to livestock? Yet they are resting. Think about this. At the very beginning of creation story, the Spirit is hovering above the waters. Why is it hovering above the waters? I mean, it could go below the waters. There's nothing there for the Spirit to inhabit. It's only after it makes this orderly space that there's something for it to inhabit. I like what John Walton says. He says, the first 6 chapters of Genesis is God building a house. But the first verse, I think maybe the second verse too, of chapter 2, is God making that house his home. You can build a house and you can rent it out to somebody else, right? That's still your house. But would you call that house your home? Your home is where you live. You have to set it up. You got to move in. You want to get it orderly so that you can live your day-to-day life. Because until you have it set up, there are impediments. Impediments? Impediments. That's getting edited out. There are impediments to your life. But you want to set it up. So if you're building a house and you want to have kids, you're going to have extra rooms, right? With a nursery, possibly, and bedrooms. You're going to hopefully have an extra bathroom because you don't want to go in there and have your son peeing on your toilet seat, right? You want to set up your house to accommodate the life that you intend on living. You want your house to be ready for it. If you're going to work from home, you're going to build an office. And so it's only after God puts a sun and moon and stars in the sky, vegetation, land, and all these animals, that he decides that it is good and worthy of his inhabitation. What is it about sea creatures and plants that God needed to have this place be a suitable home for him? What do they do for God? Was God homeless before he created the world? Why did he build this home? And why did it need to have all of these conditions before he would move in? I'm going to propose to you that it has everything to do with making this world suitable for you. God didn't create this world for any other reason than to make a world where he could live with you. The world was good because the world was suitable for humanity, and humanity could thrive in it. Humanity could rule over it alongside him. And it was only when we could live in this place that the Lord decided to make this place his home. When you are out, I hope this week you are looking at the order of the world. I hope you go hiking sometime soon. You go up on top of the pinnacles, or if you want to have a more leisurely walk, go to Raven Run in Lexington, or go find a place. I mean, maybe you can be like me when my kids were too young to hike any of that. We just go walk the Frisbee golf course at Camp Catalpa, and to them they were hiking. Just go out and get in nature. Or really, just walk outside. Look at this whole majestic world. Watch the Discovery Channel. Everything exists because God made it exist so that he could have a relationship with you. You are that important. Not because you're awesome. I mean, I love you, but you're not awesome enough that I wouldn't build anybody here a house, right? I would probably be like, I'll support you. I'll come over there and bring you pizza while you're working. I wouldn't wire anything for you because you'd die. I don't want to burn your house down 2 years from now. But God went to a tremendous effort because he wants to live with you. You are the pinnacle of creation, and you're the reason creation exists. What is it? What does that say to you? If you think about that, does it feel like it's narcissistic to think that? Does it feel egoistic, like too self-important? Because if you feel self-important, I just want you to know God may have made this world for you, but he also made it for your neighbor so that you could share this world with them. God built this world to invite you into love. This world exists because God desires love. He loves you, and he wants you to love your neighbor. What does it mean to you that God is resting in this world still? Multiple times, God is inviting you into his rest. How good are you at resting? What does rest look like to you? Because I bet every single one of us thinks of resting differently. Terry will play Magic the Gathering. I doubt Charlena knows what Magic the Gathering is. She probably would not find it restful. Right? We all have different ways of resting. But when we rest, are we resting in God's rest? God has created a world that he can do what he wanted to do, and he no longer has to remove impediments for him to do what he wants to do. And I want you to know, I even put this on Facebook recently, I don't think that I really rest in God's rest enough. Because I don't think I trust him enough. As a kid, I really felt like it was up to me to make a lot of things happen. And to this day, I still think it's up to me to make a lot of things happen, and that can lead to overfunctioning. I got this tattoo this week for that reason. Not for this sermon, it just lined up well. It's the Holy Spirit, it's providence, right? When you rest in God's rest, cool things happen, right? I got Bullet Bill with ice on him, right? Bullet Bill doesn't change directions. He's from Mario. He shoots out the pipe and he just goes in one direction. Doesn't matter what he hits. I think he actually gets to go through bricks because it doesn't. The physics of Mario are a little bit arbitrary. But if you go like that, you're going to hit bricks, right? And I hit bricks. You know, I don't stop, but I do shut down and enter into freeze mode. I don't ever fly. I live in fight or freeze my entire life, 90% of the time. And I'm learning to enter into God's rest. So I'm not telling you be like me. Unless I begin to get better at this, then follow my example. But until then, find somebody who's better at it and follow their example. God is here to provide for us. Even when we don't see it, he's working for our good. Way to pick that song. You picked that song on purpose, probably, didn't you? Yeah, my wife is smart. God is working for your good. And if you trust that, that doesn't mean you get to sit on a hammock and drink lemonade all day. But it also means that you don't have to work beyond your limits, especially if you're smart. You know, sometimes we get ourselves into a hole and we got to get out of debts. But God is working for your good. Enter into that reality and watch it set you free. We are going to celebrate a great rest that God has welcomed us into when Terry Hendren does communion for the very first time.